Good morning and welcome to our TV Toastmasters meeting for this July 16th. We welcome our members today and also our guests and certainly also our television guests. Today we've got a very interesting meeting ahead of us with a number of speakers. Of course we have our usual evaluations and table topics, and we're really looking forward to having you join us. First of all, I would like to welcome our word of the day person for today, and that is Katie Wright. She will be providing our word of the day.
Thank you. The word of the day today is very interesting. Persnickety. It's an adjective. And the dictionary defines it as A, fussy about small details, as in a persnickety teacher who keeps correcting all your little mistakes, and B, having the characteristics of a snob. It's also defined as requiring great precision as a second definition, as in having a persnickety job would mean it would require being a bit of a perfectionist. So persnickety is our word of the day, and we'll see how many times it's used today. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. The next section of our meeting is the table topics portion. Steve Ahrenholz will be presenting our table topics today, and I know we're all looking forward to hearing from him and hearing from our different guests. Steve.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmaster looking in today. Table Topics is our opportunity to practice our speaking on our feet. What I'm going to do today is select a quotation from 3 quotation booklets that I brought along. And after I've read the quotation and I call upon my Table Topics master, I would like you to tell the audience what that quotation means to you, what you feel the meaning of it is, the significance of it. As I said, I have several books of quotation here that I picked up recently. The first one is Bite-Size Einstein, quotations on just about everything from the greatest mind of the 20th century. It is interesting, the different quotes that are in here. And the first quote that I would like to call on someone to talk about is, "Bureaucracy is the death of any achievement." Bureaucracy is the death of any achievement. Joe Schwerling?
Topic master, fellow Toastmasters and observers. Already the word that slipped my mind just on that quick already.
Bureaucracy is the death of achievement.
Bureaucracy, yes. The first thing that came to mind was having just retired from a federal agency after 30 years. That's the maximum bureaucracy within the federal government and large entities, but most particularly those that are not-for-profit. There is frequently an absence of incentive for inspirational suggestions, cost-cutting. There's little recognition overall for those that do a solid, steady job. In this current age of technology with internet access on just about everyone's desk, it does enable those that have the opportunity to express themselves by what they can access through the internet. They can learn things and bring in maybe ideas that can be gathered from around the world from those doing similar jobs. But more often than not, they're probably wasting their time when they're accessing the internet during working time. So even that is a double-edged sword. So those that want to be able to express themselves and demonstrate their initiative and abilities, I encourage them to join Toastmasters. They have the ability to interact with their local club, such as ours, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, learn by listening to others' speeches, and get the sense of accomplishment from helping others as well as ourselves to improve our communication and leadership abilities. And you can find your nearest Toastmasters club by going to www.toastmasters.org. Mr. Topic Master.
Thank you, Joe. I thought you might be a good candidate to answer that question since you had worked for one of the largest bureaucracies in the world. The next quotation I'm going to ask someone to comment on comes from a book entitled Jewish Wit and Wisdom, edited by Herb Galewitz. And the quotation from here is actually a Yiddish proverb, and it has, for example, and that's in quotes, is not proof. For example, is not proof. Katie? I'm sorry. Tell us what the cliche, for example, is not proof means to you.
The cliche. Well, for example, I've been reading this book lately by Stephen Covey, and it's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think I'm on the 6th habit, which is a lot about listening to people. And that's the first thing that came to mind when Steve mentioned that, is that when you listen to someone, you can't always be reading your own autobiography into their lives. For instance, when you're listening to someone tell you about the death of their dog, and you might think, oh, I remember that because I know how that feels because I had, one of my livestock died a couple years back, so I know how you feel. Well, you don't exactly know how they feel because their situation might be completely different. They might have a real attachment to this pet or this animal, and their situation could be completely different. So what I've been practicing is when I listen to someone, to really listen to them and to understand where they're coming from, and to not say, for example, I had that problem as well. So I think that that quote is very true, and it can apply to a lot of things. And in my life at this point, I think it applies to the way that we relate to people, the way that we understand people, and how we can listen to them in a way that is empathetic and that really understands their point of view and where they're coming from. So thank you, Steve. That was very interesting.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is very good. It's often a bit of a challenge to implement all of it, but I know the other thing that I like about it are the 4 quadrants that you use for prioritizing things. You have the urgent and important, the important but not urgent, the urgent but not important, and not important and not urgent. And unfortunately, that's where some of us retreat at times. The next quotation I'm going to take from a book entitled Patriotism, Quotations from Around the World. And this is also edited by Herb Galewitz. Robert G. Ingersoll is quoted as saying, "He loves his country best who strives to make it best. He loves his country best who strives to make it best." Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Topic Master. He loves his country best who strives to make it best.
Correct.
That is so appropriate for Toastmasters. I believe that the more that you strive to make Toastmasters the very best it can be, the more you improve yourself. It's about self-growth. And so I do believe that is a true quote. To me, I believe that quote. And I think that you can just go through life drifting, or you can have a purpose. And I'm quite impressed with our president that at her young age, she has this global purpose. And I think she's helping to make the world a better place, which is actually helping to make her a better person. And so I totally believe, are you timing that? I was looking for the green card. Okay. Yeah, keep on going. Well, let's see now. What else? He who, what's the quote again?
Oh.
He who loves his country best. And you'll find that when you have a love of Toastmasters and you make a commitment, you don't have to say, well, I'll be there if I can make it. You'll find that you will make the time, and rather than trying to find the time, and then you will make it better, and because you love it. Mr. Topic Master. And you too.
Thank you, Carol. The next quotation that I would like to have explained to us comes again from my bite-sized Einstein. Egoism and competition are, alas, stronger forces than public spirit and sense of duty. Jerome? Tell us what the quotation, egoism and competition are, alas, stronger forces than public spirit and sense of duty.
May I see the book?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
It's that one there.
Well, I know the forms that egoism and competition take. And they can sometimes be very aggressive, very vicious, even malicious forces. And I am very sorry to read in your book that this writer at least believes that they can be stronger forces than public spirit and sense of duty. I'm sure that he's right, but I would hope, especially in this time when so much is going on and when we're seeing so many acts of violence and ill will and just meanness, just pure meanness, I would hope that those of us who have a sense of community, who really desire to live in an environment that is diverse, inclusive, that is understanding, that is helpful, that we will reject egoism and unnecessary competition. I can understand competition, but I cannot understand unnecessary competition. Certainly there is enough good for all of us, and I think that what we should be doing is seeking the good and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to experience the good. I reject egoism and competition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerome. Well, I think it's like the effect that a candle has in the dark. The dark can't overcome it. The light shines on. The next quotation I'm going to again take out of patriotism, quotations from around the world. Helen Gahagan Douglas is quoted as saying, "You can't prove you're an American by waving Old Glory. You can't prove you're an American by waving Old Glory." Kristin?
You can't prove you're an American by waving Old Glory. That's an outstanding quote. And you know, I think especially in our day and age, one of the most effective ways to prove that we are Americans is by our actions, by our behavior. Are we taking a stand for freedom and liberty in places of the world where oppression rules? Are we taking a stand and lighting a candle, so to speak, in the darkness so that we can set prisoners free, so that we can free people who are under oppression and suffering under tyrannical dictatorships? I think that is one of the most effective ways to prove that we are Americans. At home, in our own nation, I think it's important to prove that we're Americans by the things that we do, by serving our neighbors, by reaching out to the people around us and in our communities. I know a lot of people who are making a positive difference just in their small community. And so if each of us would just step out of ourselves basically and reach out to help people, for instance, who are suffering in a hospital or at a nursing home. If each of us would take the time to walk over to our neighbor's house and to spend some time sitting down with them and listening to hear what they have to say, then I think that we would be one step closer to proving that we are Americans. Because in a sense, that's what America is about. It's about being free to be the person that you are, to be free to love your neighbor, and to worship as you see fit. And so I think anytime Americans take the time to serve others, to spend time with them, and to promote freedom in places of the world where there isn't freedom, and even in our own homelands, then we are a step closer to proclaiming that we are Americans.
Thank you, Kristin. I'm going to take another quote from this same book on patriotism. Mohandas Gandhi is quoted as saying, "For us, patriotism is the same as the love of humanity. For us, patriotism is the same as the love of humanity." Marcia? Do you want me to repeat the quotation?
One more time.
Okay. For us, patriotism is the same as the love of humanity.
Mr. Tabletopics Master. Well, that's true, in my opinion, because to be a patriot is love of country, and who makes up your country but people? I mean, you can love objects, I guess, but most of us have a love of people. That's what makes, you can wear clothes and dresses, but the person in it makes the style, and you want to convey their feelings. So as a love of country and patriotism, you have to love the people in it. And I think that's where the patriotism comes out, is by loving the people. People came and found this country through their lack of patriotism for their other country, because they were oppressed and they were downtrodden and they felt they couldn't live their life that they wanted to. So they formed another country and left to become community and to form a group of people. And that's when they felt patriotic. If you look at Americans' history, the camaraderie and the coming together is what made it strong and gave them that sense of pride and that sense of patriotism, by working towards a common goal of forming the country and uniting people, and that gave them that sense of patriotism and camaraderie. And I think those two are equated very well, and it's a good quote. And thank you, Mr. Tabletopics.
Thank you, Marcia. And I think I have run through everyone that we have here today for Table Topics. So what I'm going to do is leave you with one more quotation. This comes again out of Jewish Wit and Wisdom, and it is by Walter Winchell. He defines optimist is a man who gets treed by a lion, but enjoys the scenery. So remember that this week when things don't go quite the way you'd like them to. With that, I'm going to turn our program back to our Toastmaster. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Steve. Well, that was very interesting. I will remember the quote about being treed by a lion this week. The next section of our meeting are the speeches and I am actually delivering the first speech. So I will just go ahead and start right into my speech. It's titled Perseverance. Perseverance is something that I have been thinking a lot about lately. With my work and, of course, with just different activities from day to day, there are so many ways that you and I need to persevere. And so I guess I just have a question this morning. How many of us are persevering through something right now? Is there anything in your life that you feel like you need to persevere through? It's there. Today, I want to talk about two individuals who persevered through absolutely incredible difficulties to achieve greatness. The first person I want to talk about is a name that's very familiar to all of us, I'm sure, and that is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln has probably one of the most interesting records of failure I have ever seen in my life. It's also one of the lengthiest. This man lost at almost everything he tried to do for years and years and years, but he continually persevered. And so last night I was reading about Abraham Lincoln, and I was thinking, we have a lot to learn from this man. Obviously, he was the President of the United States during a crucial period in our nation's history. And this is a man who had so much loss and so much perseverance behind him. Abraham Lincoln, as many of us knew, grew up in a log cabin, actually not far from here in Kentucky. You can visit his birthplace. He slept on leaves at night. He had a bed of leaves. His family was impoverished. His mother died at a very early age. He had 1 year of formal education and actually traveled around up to 50 miles around his house to gather any books that he could so that he could read and learn some more. When he grew up, in 1832, he lost a job. The following year, he failed at business. And a couple of years after that, his sweetheart passed away, and the year after that, he suffered a nervous breakdown. Talk about persevering. He had to persevere seriously to get through these issues. Later on, Abraham Lincoln was defeated for Speaker, defeated for Congress. When he was finally elected to Congress, he lost the renomination. Later on, Lincoln would be defeated for U.S. Senate, defeated for nomination for Vice President, and defeated for Senate again before finally being elected as President of the United States. Imagine, after every single failure, Abraham Lincoln got up again, stood up, brushed himself off, and persevered. There's a lot to learn from Abraham Lincoln. I was asking myself last night, have I persevered to the extent that Abraham Lincoln persevered? I think not. And that makes me think there's a lot of persevering ahead for each one of us. Another courageous person, Gladys Aylward. It's a name that isn't so familiar to us today, but Gladys was a courageous woman who was very short. She was about 5'3", I believe. She lived in England, and as she was growing up, she grew up in extreme poverty. Her parents had absolutely nothing. She had very little formal education, and her only dream in life was to be a missionary to China. She was so excited about being a missionary to China, but when she was finally able, through all the poverty and obstacles that she faced, to get to a school that would train her to be a missionary, they rejected her. They said she was too old to learn the language, at I believe 27. She was rejected, and at that point, I think a lot of us would think it would be very easy for Gladys to just step back and say, okay, my life has been made up of so many failures, so many obstacles, what am I going to do now? I think I'll just give up. She didn't. She went and she got a job as a maid, and she worked for years, saving every shilling that she made to save for a fare to China. When she finally did get on her way to China, things were far from easy. In fact, Gladys Aylward ended up taking many different modes of transportation to get from England to China. She was going through Siberia late one night on a train when suddenly she looked out the window and she saw explosions in the air. And the conductor said, oh, there's a war. By the way, we have to stop here and we're going to be here for weeks while we gather up the wounded soldiers. He said, if you need to go on with your journey, you're going to have to walk all the way back to the station where we departed from a couple days ago. So Gladys, instead of just giving up and crying right then and there, got up, took her 2 suitcases, and started walking. It was absolutely freezing. It was a Siberian night in the wilderness. Wolves were howling in the distance, I am sure. She walked as far as she could, stumbled down, fell asleep, covered in her fur coat, shivering almost to death. But she woke up the next morning and she kept walking and she kept walking and she kept walking. And that was pretty much the story of Gladys Aylward's life. She kept walking. She kept persevering through all the difficulties that she faced. When she got to China, Gladys became responsible for saving the lives of 100 orphan children. These children would have died during the war between China and Japan. It was a very serious war zone that they were in, and she actually led them through a very treacherous mountain pass to save their lives. Extraordinary story. Perseverance. It is an amazing word, and there is so much power in perseverance. In fact, there is no limit to what we can accomplish when we persevere. After he had been beaten by Stephen Douglas in the race for U.S. Senate, Abraham Lincoln had something very interesting to say. He told his supporters not to give up after 1 nor 100 defeats. I think Abraham Lincoln would know. He had probably experienced 100 defeats. The great statesman William Churchill said, "Never, never, never give up." Powerful words. There is no limit to what we can accomplish when we persevere. So today I just want to leave you with a question. How are you going to persevere today? I think at this point we need to leave 1 minute for the evaluation. My kind evaluator, Marcia. Our second speaker this morning is Joe Schwerling. He is posing a very interesting question to us this morning. Joe's title for his speech is "What Customer Service?" ? I think I will be very interested to hear what this speech is about. Joe.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Those that are old enough, such as myself, or have seen reruns of old commercials, remember the good old days when stores had clerks that were very helpful. You had almost a clerk for every customer. Stores were much smaller. You had actual customer service. Anyone seen the old gas station commercials about Texaco? You pull up to get gas and 6 guys run out and check your tires, check under your hood. I remember when they used to ask if they wanted to check your air and your oil in the early 70s. Back then, we're only paying about 25 cents a gallon for gas. Having been a bank examiner for over 30 years, as visiting at different institutions and as a customer, banks used to give away little things frequently. Pens, paper, magnets, bottle tops, little plastic containers for all kinds of things. There was an industry about all these things that were given away to customers. When is the last time anyone received something from a store that they were patronizing, or a bank? Even the banks used to offer interest used to pay 5 and 6% interest on savings accounts. My current statement shows I'm getting 0.25% interest. And then they're charging 20% on credit cards. The telephone companies and anything we have to do by telephone, of course, we're not getting the kind of service anymore that we used to. The long distance charges have gone down, but local access and any operator assistance from a live person is significantly impaired or completely absent. Becoming a senior citizen, maybe I'm considered to be persnickety in questioning why we don't get any of these human services that we used to. I'd be inclined to call what we receive now as a microservice rather than a customer service. The last few days I've been dealing with local telephone company and my cell phone and with some of my internet connections and protecting my computer against viruses. So you have to try to get technical support or customer support over the phone. Well, anymore, When's the last time anyone called a business of any size and actually got a human person to answer the phone on the first try or the second? Not only that, usually we're receiving an answering message that tells us to pick one of 6 buttons, and then you pick one of those, and then it picks one of the next 5, and then one of the next 4. And the phone company has even gone to the point now where they give a commercial at the end of each announcement before they'll let you push the buttons. We see the commercials about bundling your telephone service to receive discounts. But they announce it after the first menu of selections, and after the second menu of selections, and after the third. So you have to keep listening to the same things over and over again. And they bundle numerous options together, which means you have to go through more selections further down. And whenever someone actually answers the phone, and in the messages they're giving while you're waiting, they're saying, well, we're having an exceedingly high demand right now. They never say the truth. We don't have enough people working right now. We've laid them all off so we can cut expenses. We've transferred our customer service to another country, and they're on their break right now. Never will you get the truth. It's probably not even correct to call the average, the typical customer a customer anymore. A customer should be someone that is we're a source of income from those that we deal with, but we're not a valued commodity to them anymore. We're just a number on a survey or a statistical report as to how long can they leave the customers wait online or to answer correspondence before they'll go away. And then they stretch out to the maximum. Even with waiting online, now some of the responses are, we don't want you to have to wait online. Give us your number and we'll call you back in so many minutes when we have someone available. So what happens? You'd spend 5 minutes giving them the information so they can call you back. Then you wait 2 or 3 minutes to maybe 20 minutes, and then you get a call back. It's not the phone company. It's their computer saying, well, we're calling you back now because you signaled us before that you wanted us to contact you. We're not a live person. We're another computer. But punch on the phone when the person who called us the first time is there. They don't even want their live operator to have to wait 20 seconds while the family members hand the phone to someone else, whoever answered it. Perhaps what should be done is to redefine the word customer. Take the word cuss out of it. Because the cuss is what the customers are thinking and would like to do when they're being treated as a customer. So I think there needs to be a new word found for a consumer who is being conned by everyone into thinking they're being treated as a customer. Madam Toastmaster.
With the customer service issues today. I know at my workplace, we often have customers calling. I work with a lot of email and hosting. And so people will call and they'll say, I have a problem with my email. And I always just think, I wish that I could just give them the solution and then be done with it. But for a lot of times we have to, hold their hand through the whole thing. But the important thing is we're there for our customers. And I think we need to see a lot more of that today. Of course, a lot of people, they have an issue, but they'll call and they'll get an automated response, and that can be frustrating. So good speech. We would have 1 minute for the evaluation, but I'm actually done with the evaluation, so we can go ahead and move on to the evaluation portion of our meeting. Our first evaluator is the evaluator for my speech. Very graciously, Marcia has agreed to evaluate my speech. I really appreciate that. And so, Marcia, will you come?
Miss Tabletopics, or Toastmaster and speaker. And doing evaluator too, so doing a lot of roles. Kristin Wright's speech is perseverance. I'm not sure, this is from the Basic Communication and Leadership Manual. I thought your opening was very good. You started out with a question, and that's one of the things Toastmasters recommends when you're doing a speech, is to get the audience involved. And a question is one way to get the audience involved. You get them thinking and getting them on the right track to where your speech is going. I thought the topic was good because I think Toastmasters can identify with perseverance. You persevere through your manuals and doing speeches and getting up here and speaking to better yourself. The ending, you also asked a question, and you also challenged us to do something, which is very good. That's one of the keys. Another Toastmaster's suggestion is to get people involved and get them out there once they finish their meetings and stuff to do something to better the world. And the challenge was to become better at perseverance. The speech did have a clear opening. You gave examples. You had 2 examples of Abraham Lincoln and Gladys. My suggestion for improvement would be to maybe bring a picture or visual aids. I could picture Abraham Lincoln, but I am not familiar at all with Gladys, and it would be kind of interesting to see a picture of her, so you could put I'm like that. I like to put a face with a voice and with a story and stuff like that. That helps me. Let's see. And interesting thing about the presentation was learning things about people you thought you knew. I thought I knew a lot about Abraham Lincoln, but there's things I didn't know about him. And I didn't know about Gladys at all, and it was nice to hear a story about somebody who I didn't know. And an interesting story of that, because that, missionary is a hard work to begin with. What did we learn about I know this isn't your icebreaker speech, but we did learn that you want to become better at perseverance. And what do you do well already? You have good eye contact, you have a good vocal variety, a nice speaking voice, and you have very good facial expressions. You convey a lot through your eyes and through your facial expressions. And you have enthusiasm in your voice that gets out there and gets people wanting to hear what you have to say. So I thought it was a very good speech, and I'm glad I got to be here to hear this. Kristin.
Thank you so much, Marcia. That was very helpful. Our next evaluation is the evaluation for Joe Schwerling, and I will actually be delivering the evaluation, so I'm here. Joe, that was an excellent speech. The title, What Customer Service? I felt like it was a good topic. Joe is working out of the Communication and Leadership program, and this speech is titled Work with Words. I felt like you chose a good topic for working with words. That's exactly what you did. You used words that were simple, easy to understand, and conveyed your meaning very effectively. I felt like there were a couple areas for improvement in terms of especially perhaps sharing some personal experiences. I know you were talking about customer service issues, something that we could all identify with, but it could have brought it a little closer to home if you would say, I was on the phone for 6 hours with my telephone company or whatever, or for email, and I never talked to a human being during the entire time, something like that to kind of add some interest. I felt like also, even though the speech was specifically focusing on working with words, something else you could have done is develop some more gestures. I felt like perhaps a gesture of the phone, that could be helpful, or at one point you were talking about dialing different buttons. There's another one right there, just different ways to be a little more creative in terms of your gestures. I was working on the evaluation as you were speaking, and I was about to write, how about a practical solution for this dilemma, when you came up with one to take the cuss out of customer service. So I was glad to see you actually had a solution for the problem. I I know people, again, really identified with you. Your sentences were short, simple, understandable. That was excellent. There were a couple of pauses, but really not that many. So you did very well with that. Did the speaker's word usage add to the overall effectiveness of the speech? I would say absolutely. And you had some good vocal variety because you were interested in your subject. So I felt like that was good. You could probably improve some on that as well. Again, good topic, good for working with words. I would just play up some visible images for people. Play up the personal experiences or some more gestures, a little more just interest, I guess. Just kind of play up the experience on that. I think it was an excellent speech, and you did a great job. It was a good topic, so good job, Joe. All right, at this time, our next portion of the meeting is the timer reports. This should definitely be interesting as Katie is doing it for the first time, and I saw some kind of frantic expressions here and there throughout the meeting, but hopefully she did all right. So Katie.
All right, we'll start out with some apologies. I'm really sorry to Joe. When you first started, I'm sure you filled out your 2 minutes for the table topics, and I was not timing it at all, but when I finally got around to timing you, I'm sure you had done 2 minutes already. So, good job, Joe. Joe timed me at 1 minute and 42 seconds for my table topics. And again, this is 2 minutes. The table topics should be 2 minutes long. So Joe filled out his time quite nicely. Carol's time was 1 minute and 44 seconds, which I thought was perfect. Kristin's time was 1 minute and 43 seconds. And Marcia's time was 1 minute and 41 seconds. So we were all right in there. We all used up our time and didn't get boring. For the speakers, I owe an apology to Kristin. I was not exactly being a persnickety timer in the meaning, I wasn't really a perfectionist timer. I did mess up. I held up the yellow light at the wrong time, and I kind of rushed the end of her speech. It was 6 minutes and 18 seconds. It should have been around 6 minutes and 30 seconds if I had held up the yellow at the right time. Joe, you did a great job filling out your time, 6 minutes and 43 seconds. So both of you were right in there. And then for the evaluators, the time is 3 minutes. And Marcia, you were 2 minutes and 57 seconds, which is perfect. And Kristin, you were 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the button. So, great job, everyone.
Hey, Katie, you did a good job after all. I think everyone came in excellently on our times today. That is very encouraging. At this time, we will return control of the meeting to myself once again. And ask for any comments from anyone from the floor. Does anyone have any comments? We all set? I think we had a good meeting. It was an excellent time. I think everyone did excellent, not only on the timing, but also on their speeches and on their table topics and evaluations. I really appreciate each person's contribution. I will offer closing comments from the president because I'm also the president. So since I'm standing right here, I'll offer the closing comments. This was an excellent meeting. I want to thank everyone who participated, all of our members, guests, and also, of course, our television audience. We really appreciate you. Please feel free to join us at some point for our Toastmasters meeting. Our next meeting is an August meeting, the first Monday of the month at 6:30 at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. We would definitely hope to see you there. Of course, our studio meeting occurs every third Saturday of the month at this studio. Thank you again so much to everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful Saturday.